Welcome to the Honourable and the Hack.
Hey everyone, welcome back to your favorite Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, or maybe I just like to envision that's what it is, but you are with the Honourable and the Hack. My name is Andrew Parsons. Great to have you here, and as always, great to be here with Alex Bill.
Hey, Andrew. Happy to be back as always. Happy to be kind of turning back towards politics after a couple of weeks, which we really enjoyed exploring sports and arts and tourism, but getting back a little bit back into your roots and into the House of Assembly today, which I'm really looking forward to.
We're really looking forward to this one. It's a chance to speak to someone that's in a role that's not quite always understood by the public, and someone that is new to the role. So this person has a long tenure in politics, municipal politics for 8 years, followed up by being, I think, the second longest running member of the House of Assembly, and now recently has been acclaimed as the Speaker of the House of Assembly.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And with that great setup, let me give a warm welcome to Paul Lane.
How you doing, guys? Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Normally, I don't bother as a journalist with the Honourable when I introduce or talk about anybody, including my co-host here. But you were kind enough to come on, so I adopted it tonight.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's not necessary.
Paul, I guess I'll start with the kind of big picture about your new role in life and politics today. And that's, why did you want to be Speaker of the House of Assembly?
Well, it's not something when I first got involved in politics on the provincial level, it's not something that ever occurred to me would come my way, to be honest with you. But this is my 15th year in politics now. And so after sitting through a good many days and evenings and long nights in that House Assembly, a lot of them with Andrew there, and I sometimes they say a change is as good as a rest, and the opportunity came, and it's a chance to, I guess, look at the House Assembly in a different way and with a different hat. And so I just thought it was a new challenge, a great opportunity, and I just decided to take it.
So, Paul, I got to ask you this now. How long have you been the Speaker now? Because the dates are all blurry, and I'll explain why.
Be honest with you, I can't tell you the exact date, but basically the after election, the date that we all got sworn into the House Assembly, I was elected. Well, I wasn't elected. I guess I was acclaimed that very same day. So I guess it's been what, three months?
Yeah, like it was in November.
It was in November. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I asked this, okay, because like you say, you've been around a long time. Besides Eddie Joyce, you're probably the longest serving, and someone who's been around and put their time in the debates. Is there anything though in this time now that you've been in the Speaker's role that there's been a moment where like, oh wow, I didn't realize that about being the Speaker? Anything that's hit you as sort of like a surprise, something new? Maybe just a little thing you didn't realize about the role or the office itself?
I think I had a fairly good idea going into it. What would be involved. I think I didn't necessarily realize that that I would be dealing with statutory officers as I do. They're still autonomous, but they report to the House Assembly through the Speaker's office. So I do have dealings with our statutory officers and so on, which was something I didn't quite understand or realize, I guess, going into it. But pretty much, everything else, I'll say I had an awareness about it. As someone who has been involved, going on 15 years now, and speaking in the House Assembly, and as you know, I have a pretty strong opinion on a lot of matters, and I've never been shy in sharing those opinions. But taking on the Speaker is sort of it's a nonpartisan, neutral role, and you can't think like a politician. My sole purpose really is to oversee the House Assembly when it's in operation and when it's not in operation. and I guess to act as a referee, certainly, if you will, when the House is in session. And you have to totally remove any partisan lens. And while you may have your own personal opinions about various matters, you sort of have to set that aside, and you have to look at everything in an objective way in terms of the enforcement of the rules and decorum and so on. So it takes a while to kind of get your head around it. And even some of the discussions I've had with staff, with the clerk, and so on various topics, you just have to think about things in a different way than I ever thought about them before. So that's been new, and quite frankly, it's been a bit of a challenge, especially first starting off. But as time goes on, you kind of, you understand the role better, and you understand the fact that you're really not politically affiliated in any way, and you have a specific role, and you have to stay focused on that neutral, nonpartisan role at all times. Yeah.
Paul, thanks for that. For the listener and the viewer, I'll clarify that when you say statutory officers, you're talking about these people who, I think the public knows them individually, but doesn't think of them as like one class of representatives. So that's the Commissioner for Legislative Standards, the Chief Electoral Officer, Child and Youth Advocate, the Citizens Representative, the Information and Privacy Commissioner. Those all, they're independent, but their reports and their information flow through the Speaker's office to you. And it goes right into a question that I was probably going to ask later in this podcast, because it's getting a little into the weeds. But that relationship, it's been in the spotlight for a few years. There was some tension between a couple of the officers a few years ago. There was a report by Justice Robert Fowler, 455 pages, not a big page turner. So probably several nights combined reading to get through that. But, is that, you're talking about that being a challenge, the sort of learning curve. Is that kind of something that is on your radar now more, and something that, you may have the ability to influence or change as you kind of step into this role?
No, not really. And when you talk about understanding the role and understanding how things work, I guess that was one of the things that, when you think about, there's legislation and so on that kind of governs the House Assembly, whether it be the House Assembly Accountability Integrity Act and so on, that we derive a lot of our rules, if you will, and how we operate and so on. But the reality of it is that legislation can only be changed by the government. And a lot of the duties that fall from that legislation to statutory officers and so on, they still operate totally autonomous on their own. So while I would have dealings, I guess, with them in terms of reports flowing through, and there's other administrative functions I have in terms of approvals, like, budgets for those offices and so on, flows through the Management Commission, of which I'm the chair of the Management Commission. So budgetary requests for the year for all those offices and so on, and other things around, human resource requests and filling up positions and that type of thing. It sort of falls through my office. So we do have involvement in that regard. But when it comes to the actual operation of those offices and those officers, they operate on their own. And when it comes to any changes to legislation that one may want to see, potentially to, whether it be to make improvements or adjustments or whatever the case might be, it does not fall to, even though my office is impacted perhaps by some of that legislation, I still don't have the ability to change that legislation. It still falls on the legislative branch, being the government, to bring forth legislation. Once that legislation is changed, if it's changed, then I, like anyone else, would have to abide by those changes. And obviously, I would have an interest in certain pieces of legislation that pertain more so to my office. But I don't get to change that. Only the government can actually make those changes.
So, Paul, I'm just going to go back to when you're talking about, the nonpartisan nature and the you're saying, a bit of a challenge, and that's not surprising. I mean, when you go from sitting in the House of Assembly as long as you did, sort of as long as, I mean, I was there quite a time too, as you say. And it's like changing your nature. All of a sudden, you go from playing the game to basically refereeing the game. One thing I will say that I think works in your advantage, though, is that for the last number of years now, you've been an independent. So you haven't been sitting in a government caucus or an opposition caucus, sort of falling by the party lines. You've been sitting, sort of following your own. You as an independent, well, that's what it is independent. I think maybe I'm saying this, maybe you can agree or disagree. I think that having been an independent will be helpful in the transition to the speaker's role rather than coming straight out of a caucus.
Absolutely. The speaker's role, as I say, is to be politically neutral. And who better to be politically neutral and nonpartisan than someone who was, by their very nature, nonpartisan? I've been elected 3 times now as an independent member. I've spent most of my career in politics as an independent member. So no, I don't have any ties to any of the parties. So therefore, any real or certainly perceived bias or pressure that one might associate to a speaker who is a party person does not exist in my case. So I think it only enhances the reality and certainly the perception, and perception is reality, of course, of having someone who is going to be neutral and unbiased in the role and to call things right down the center. And quite honestly, that's exactly what I intend to do.
So, I mean, I'm just sort of giving my opinion here, but having sat on both sides of the House, same as yourself, and there were times when, yes, the speaker is impartial and nonpartisan, but I mean, when the speaker comes from one side, sometimes there's almost like that little wink and a nod that, like I'll just call it a hometown ref, we'll say. And there was times when you're like, oh, I know that I'm not going to get this one by because, the speaker is on that side. And sometimes I'm sure speakers feel pressure from having been a member of that caucus or having been a member of that team. How do you think you're going to do in terms of I mean, I'm saying this as a compliment. I don't know of a single friggin' debate that you didn't participate in over the last 10 years, to the point where sometimes I was like, holy Jesus, Paul, give it up, right? But how do you think you're going to adjust to, you're not going to get to do that this time. You don't get to comment. It's hard. People don't realize when you're in opposition, you're expected to know a lot about a lot of different pieces that come, to do a lot of independent research on your own, as opposed to government, where in many cases I might only deal with what I was minister for. How do you feel you're going to deal with not being able to have that input like you've had?
Well, I guess that's that's a challenge for me, no doubt. As you say, it's something that it's something that from my perspective over the years, I've never shied away from a debate. I've always tried my best to do my research to understand multiple topics, as I have, and you have to, certainly as an independent in particular, because I wouldn't be shadowing a particular department. I'm shadowing the entire government, quite frankly. You're right. I did participate in every debate. Now, I would say that, part of the reason sometimes, depending on the issue, depending on what the topic was, may have, I suppose, been more boisterous on some issues than others. But I always participated in everything. And quite frankly, it's because being elected as an independent for people of my district, I felt that they had the right to have their say on every single piece of legislation. So there would have been times when I might have just said, listen, just for the record, I agree with this or I disagree with it, even if I didn't have a whole lot to say, just because I felt strongly then and I feel strongly now that people want, they have a right to representation. It's part of our democracy, and it's important that their members speak out for them. This presents a new challenge and a new role, of course. Now, just because I'm going to be not involved in direct debate in the House Assembly doesn't mean I don't advocate for my constituents, because I still have a constituency office, which is very active, and I still talk to, and I have great access to ministers, the premier, and so on, for issues impacting my district and any issues, quite frankly. Someone comes to me and they say, I have a concern about whatever. I'm going right to the minister, to the premier, to their office, and communicating that. And I've always done that. And I will continue to do that. But you're right. You won't be speaking as part of that actual debate in the House. You'll actually be overseeing the debate of the House. And, it's a different role, no doubt. But and it's going to be a bit of a challenging one, I'm sure, as it has been for other speakers in the past.
Yeah.
I'm up to the challenge. It's somebody has to do it. Why not me? That's the way I look at it.
And people don't realize too that if you don't have a good speaker there, it's like having a good referee in a sports game. It affects the quality of the game for those watching. And the same thing here. People want good debate. They want a good legislature, which comes down to you. So I have no doubt you can handle it. But anyways, I see Alex is ready to come in there. So I'm just going to sit back for a second.
Well, my last question was a real barn burner about 500-page judicial reports and management commission reform. So I might pivot here and ask Paul, how many days or maybe how many hours do you think it'll take before you have to use that big baritone voice to shut down a fight or overly hostile heckling in the House?
I'm hoping I'm not going to have to use it, but I'm also a realist. And I'm sure that there will be times when it'll happen, that it'll be required. Just basing it on every other legislature I've sat in. I will say, though, and I'm sure Andrew can speak to this and attest to this as well, that in my opinion at least, and this is just my opinion, I feel that despite, sometimes you hear people talking about, in the legislature they're acting like children and they're fighting, whatever, and there's no doubt there are times that, people are passionate about their districts and about particular issues, and sometimes, that passion comes out and whatever, but I have to say, compared to when I was first elected, I thought that the legislature, like the last session, as an example, the last assembly, I should say, I thought that last assembly, in terms of decorum and respect and so on, overall, wasn't perfect, and it's never going to be perfect, but overall, I didn't think it was too bad. Certainly not when I compare it to, say, 2011, when I was first elected. I think that's when Andrew was first elected as well. And I've seen a huge improvement since then. And it's continued to get better, in my opinion, it has. And from some of the old war stories you hear, it was probably even way worse prior to 2011, before I was even there. There was times. I'm just hoping that that members, we've got a lot of new people, so we don't have that there's not a lot of baggage there. Most of the old guys, it's only myself and Eddie left, really. It was myself, Eddie, and Andrew at the time. We were the three had served the longest. So there's a lot of new people there now. So we kind of got a fresh slate to a great degree. So I'm hoping that members are going to understand why they're there, the privilege they have to be there, and the absolute need to have decorum and respect in the House of Assembly. It really is a sacred place for our democracy in this province, and it should be treated with the utmost respect and decorum. I'm hopeful that members are going to treat it that way. I have no doubt, though, that there will be heated debates. It's inevitable. And there will be times when members will have to be told to abide by the standing orders of the House and so on. I'm certainly hoping I'm not going to have to be taking much punitive action, if you will. But if I have to, I will. At the end of the day, we will have decorum in the House Assembly while I'm there, one way or the other. But I'm very hopeful and optimistic that I won't have to be too punitive with too many folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you actually sort of confirmed something we talked about a while ago on the pod here, myself and Alex, and I talked about the House and how that's sometimes the perception, but the reality is that it has gotten much, much more mellow, I would even say. It is not the same. And I think that, we go back to 2011. I said before that, can you imagine what it was like before the TVs were there? I mean, it could get pretty nasty. I know that for a fact, and it got nasty while we were there, but it has gotten better. Although I agree, like you're talking about, is inevitable. There's going to be heated debates. That's what we want. We don't want like we have people with strong opinions and feelings about their districts and issues in the province. Strong personalities. It's going to happen. I mean, even uh, every good match will say, and I keep coming back to the sports analogies here, but just because a referee has to step in and say, "All right, guys, take it easy," that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. That's a normal thing. I think the biggest thing that bothered me is the difference between, most people go to the House, Paul, they're there for the first 45 minutes. Like they're there for the member statements, the ministerials, and then that 30 minutes of QP. A lot of people are not there for the remainder of it, which can get pretty dry. I enjoyed it. Same as yourself, because we were speaking to bills, we were speaking to legislation, and the only thing that sort of bothered me is there's certain days when you get those classes come in, like, oh, it's the grade 6 class from such and such school, and those were the days inevitably when it would just go sideways in front of these kids watching, and I'm like, oh Jesus, like, to the point when I was house leader, I would actually warn our side. I'm like, guys, like, keep an eye out now. Like, not that it should matter. You can't predict when something's going to happen, but there was something about those days that it would just sort of give me let's hope that it stays on track here.
Yeah, there's no doubt there have been times. There's been times there that I've shook my head as well over the years, and it's an important point you raise about people coming to the house, and you're right. We have visitors to the House Assembly on a fairly regular basis, whether it be people who are having member statements read by them, or ministerial statements for something they've done significant in the community, or to announce that it's social workers week or nurses week or whatever the case might be. And we also have people there a lot of times from service groups like the Lions Club, the Kinsman Club, and schools, students, and so on. And it is an opportunity, I think, for all members to demonstrate, when there are people there, to demonstrate the respect that we hold for the democracy that we're so lucky to have. I know people sometimes complain about things in this country, political and otherwise, and province. But I would take this province, this country, over anywhere else in the world, especially these days. And we are lucky to have the democracy that we have, and we should be showing it as members all the time. And actually, I'm kind of glad that you did mention schools. Something that was started last year, Speaker Bennett started it, was the Maze Tour. And so when the House closed last year, the Speaker and the clerk and some staff, they went around to different parts of the province, and the Sergeant at Arms brought the mace and did presentations to schools and community organizations and town halls and all that stuff around the province, various locations, just trying to teach people about democracy, about our House Assembly. A lot of people, certainly in the rural areas, might not have the opportunity to visit the House Assembly. So that's something that we're going to continue on with this year. And I actually did a presentation myself and my staff at O'Donnell High School just a week ago to the social studies class. We brought the mace and all that stuff out to O'Donnell and did a presentation about how democracy works in the House Assembly and the importance of it and all that kind of stuff. So that's something that we're going to continue on, and we're going to continue with the mace tour this summer. We also have another program that was initiated last year. Will continue for teachers. They come in to the House Assembly for a week, and they do a week's training about the House Assembly, about the history of the House, how bills become laws, all that fun stuff. And then like a workshop, and they take in it, and we pick teachers from throughout various areas of the province and so on. And that's all budget funded for, and then they take that information to bring back to teach to the schools in which they teach. So it's a way that we're trying to do outreach to try to teach children and our youth about the value of democracy and how the House Assembly operates and how bills become laws and all that stuff. So That's something that I suppose a lot of people probably don't realize that we actually do.
They probably don't. So I'm glad you're going to continue that. I think it's a good thing. And you're right. I mean, it's harder and harder for schools to avail of, like you say, getting down. How often can these schools outside get down to the House of Assembly? I was just sort of grinning there because I'm like, if they didn't know the difference, like Paul, like I'm a big dude. You are taller than me. You're kind of imposing. I love the thought of you walking into a school with the mace. It'd be like, holy man, that's
Andre the Giant, right? Yeah.
Plus, dealing with all those
Before I decided to get in politics, I had looked at a career in the WWF, but Andre the Giant already had that role filled, so I moved on to politics.
Paul, you've got a lot of reverence for the House of Assembly and respect for your predecessors in this role, the role you're stepping into. You can hear it through the conversation we've had already. These sort of, I think you used the word sacred responsibility. What is something you'd like to do differently than your predecessors as Speaker, or is there something that you would like to do differently to kind of make your mark on this role, this office?
I will say one thing. Well, there's a couple of things. One thing that I'm certainly, and again, it sort of falls outside my purview because it's really a government responsibility, I guess, to some degree. But I would like to see our House Assembly be more accessible than what it is. There have been improvements made in the chamber over the last. We have closed captioning. We have TV screens, monitors in the house now for people with visual issues and with closed captioning and so on. We have put the doors going into the chamber now have the push buttons and so on. But there's still work that needs to be done in terms of making not just the chamber itself, but the House Assembly precinct, which takes in the outer area and the washrooms and all that kind of stuff to make things totally accessible. So if there's a way that I can, I guess, advocate in that regard to make some positive change, that's something I'd like to see happen. And there's a couple of other ideas I have of a couple of things I'd like to tweak and in the House as far as some things we do, but I'm not really at liberty to talk about them just yet until they happen or if they happen. But I would say that, like everybody, I'm sure everybody wants to. I would hope that most people want to leave a place better than the way they found it. And that's the way I've always tried to operate in anything I've ever done, any job I've ever had, to make a difference and to make some improvements if I could. So I have a couple of things in the back of my mind that I can't really speak about right now that I would like to see perhaps move forward and as time goes on. I've only been in the role a couple of months, so to be honest with you, I'm still getting my feet wet. And while I do understand how things work because of being in the House for 14 plus years, it's one thing to be there and observe it. It's another thing to be sitting in the chair and having to actually. And Andrew, he was House leader at one time, so he understands that.
There's something to be said. I mean, you can do all the prep you want, but when you're put right into the when you're into the cut and thrust, and you're going to be called upon, on points of order and the things like that. I mean, that's when hopefully the training you've done gets you there. And I have faith you'll do that. It's something to be said, actually, because I consider myself, when I was a House leader or an opposition House leader, in some cases is even probably more important when you're opposition, knowing the rules. Sometimes I feel like maybe the players don't all know the rules like they should. And as good as I thought it was, there were some people that just blew me away with how much they knew the process, the procedure, and the things that can be done. And the same goes for speakers. Some speakers had a better handle of those rules than not. So I'm glad to hear you're really putting the work in here. When you mention your initiatives, Paul, you got lots of time, and we're looking forward to hearing what comes out of that. But I want to go sort of zag here a little bit now. So, I mean, a lot of people in the province probably think, okay, well, Paul Lane has been a provincial politician, MHA, for almost 15 years, since 2011. But that wasn't your first stint in politics. You were in municipal politics before that. Can you give us a little, like, was politics something that was always in your blood? Was it something that struck you as you got older? Like, give us a little backdrop of what got you into the, because I'm sure the municipal was a springboard to provincial, but what got you into that municipal gate in Mount Pearl?
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to look at my high school yearbook, you will not see politician. And I would say even up till the point when I was in my certainly early 20s, I'll say. At that point in time in my life, I'd be hard pressed to tell you who the premier was of the day. That's how disconnected I was. Had other things on my mind, and it wasn't politics back in those days. But there was a couple of things that happened, and I don't want to belabor it, make it too long, but on the municipal side of things, yes, I did serve on Mount Pearl City Council for 8 years as councillor and as deputy mayor as well. And it was the municipal that led me to the provincial, I guess, in terms of that opportunity when it presented itself. But after I had gotten married, we moved to CBS originally, actually. Because land was cheaper and we're just starting out, and we built a new home and so on. It was cheaper to do it at CBS. So we were up in CBS for about 4 or 5 years or whatever it was. But then it was the long drives at the time back and forth to work, for family events, for every time you wanted to go shopping and everything else. It was, you were finding yourself always driving back and forth, back and forth. It just became a racket. And especially my wife was a nurse, and we were doing shift work at the time. She hated driving, especially in the wintertime by herself and so on. So anyway, we decided, no, we got to move. And of course, my wife was born and raised in Mount Pearl, and she had family. She still has family in Mount Pearl. So naturally, that's where we went. And I was from St. John's, not Mount Pearl. So when I moved into Mount Pearl, I didn't know a whole lot of people. So I said to Charmaine at the time, I said, I got to do something to make some friends, know some people, whatever. I got involved with the Lions Club, started getting involved with a bunch of projects. Eventually, someone taps you on the shoulder and says, geez, Paul, like, you're like literally doing everything in Mount Pearl. I was Citizen of the Year at the time. And you should run for Mount Pearl Council. So that's kind of how it started.
Okay.
As through volunteerism, really. And I guess on the provincial side of it, not to make a long story short, but I had worked for the provincial government. It was one of my first jobs I had when I got out of school and so on. And at that time, I was involved with the union. And we had, you can recall, a certain premier and a campaign against him when he rolled back the wages and so on of the public sector workers. And I was one of them, and I was very upset like everybody else. And there was a provincial election on the go at the time, just after that. And I'm like, well, who's running here? Anyway, it turned out it was Harvey Hodder. And I think I took 3 weeks annual leave. I went up and I found his headquarters up at the old paint shop on Topsail Road. I was his greatest volunteer. I worked on his campaign day and night. Of course, he won, and that led me, I guess, after the election. Then he said, Paul, why don't you get involved with my district association? And I'm like, what's a district association? I didn't even know what that was. So I did, and then, started going to the conventions, and Andrew knows how all that works. That's what got me involved, I guess, provincially. And so when the opportunity came, I was on Mount Pearl Council for 8 years, and Dave D9 decided he wasn't going to run again. So there was an opening there, and so I ran, and the rest is history, I guess.
Paul, it's really great to get that history of your life before you got into politics, because I think it reflects the reputation you've kind of earned as a politician today. I think when people think of you, it is as the like ultimate constituency guy. You're like Rob Ford without the crack. Like, I don't know how many rubber chicken
Joyce without the hair.
But I don't know how many rubber chicken dinners you've had to have in your life. But you're the guy who's at every event and every constituency call, and which is difficult in an urban district, especially. But it's clearly there was a thread there from before municipal politics to today, 15 years in the House, probably 19, unless something happens that we have an election before this government's term runs out. So, you'll have been in the House 19 years by the time the next election rolls around, probably.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question for MHA Paul Lane, not Speaker of the House Paul Lane. Will the next MHA from Mount Pearl Southlands also be Elaine?
Maybe you ought to have her on your show and ask her that. I don't know what the future is going to hold, to be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't made up my mind, to be honest with you, totally at this point, what my future will be. You're right. If assuming we go the full 4 years, that'll be 19 years for me. I'll be 62 years old at that point in time. And I know there have been people who got into politics when they were 70 or whatever, when they started, for that matter. As much as I enjoy this, and I really do enjoy this, it can't last forever. And my family has made a lot of sacrifices for me to be able to do all this. You're always sort of juggling that because nobody knows, nobody's promised tomorrow. It is getting around that time for me. And as Harvey Hodder told me, Harvey was kind of the guy that got me involved. And it was a real full circle moment for me when I got to be when I got to be the Speaker of the House, and Harvey, who was my mentor, was the Speaker of the House. So that was really cool, I got to say. But you get to a point where you're saying, will I continue on? How much longer will I go? So this might be my last one. I'm not sure. We'll take it day by day, year by year. We'll see what happens. But yes, you're referencing the other lane, and of course, it's my daughter Chelsea. She was someone who I never thought would ever be involved with politics, to be honest with you. She was always very shy as a child. And even into her teenage years, she went to university, became a teacher, and she came right out of her shell. And she just became like a totally different person, to be honest with you. In a good way. Very confident, and she's very intelligent. She's a lot more intelligent than her father, I can tell you that. And so, she was elected. She was just re-elected to Mount Pearl Council this last election. She was elected the time before that. I never ever thought she would have that interest in politics. If she decides that that's something that she has an interest in provincially, I can tell you Dad will be proud. Dad will be behind her 100%. But, we'll see what happens, I guess. That'll be her decision to make. And the timing, of course, politics is all about timing. So, things have to align for her as well in terms of her job and, the kids and her ability to do all that. So we'll see what happens.
So Paul, that sounds all wonderful and good, but I think our listeners were more hoping for a Lane versus Lane nomination battle. We don't want this stuff where dad is supportive of his daughter. I think we want the other way around. But what I will say is, someone who followed after their father in politics, there's nothing wrong with having a good set of coattails. I certainly took advantage of it. I'm sure Chelsea, if the time ever comes, will do the same. There comes with the pressure then too, though, that you got to keep up with. You've built a great name in Mount Pearl. You got to keep up with that. But again, she's already started on that track on herself, so good for her. Now, we're getting down towards the end of it here. I want to toss at a couple things. I know AB might have a couple more, but one of these things, look, let's throw the politics to the side here. Please tell me this. How long have you been the reigning karaoke king of Mount Pearl and St. John's? I mean, it's been reported before. I don't think I'm breaking new ground, but people don't know that you can belt out White Wedding like no one else's business.
Yes, that's kind of funny. Actually, in James McLeod's book, Business as Usual, Politics.
No, it said Turmoil as Always. I think
Turmoil as Usual.
Turmoil
as Usual. Yeah. In his book, Turmoil as Usual, the very first sentence in that book, if I'm not mistaken, is, "Do you know that Paul Lane can sing Rebel Yell better than Billy Idol?" I think that's what it says, which was kind of funny. I think sometimes one of the things that people miss with politicians is there's this perception. People have a perception. Well, it's not just politicians. I think people have perceptions about lots of people based on how they look, how they dress, what type of career they have. There's these preconceived notions that people have. But what people don't sometimes realize, is that politicians are just ordinary citizens, just like everybody else. But we're just normal people, and there are people in politics that they like to knit, they like to sew. There's some that are good artists. There's some people who like to dance. There's Tony Cornick used to be a fabulous dancer, and, and there's people who like to sing. I've always enjoyed singing. I always enjoyed karaoke. It's a bit of fun. Some people, have said to me in the past that talking about music, and for some reason, oh well, you're one of these guys in the House Assembly. You're there with your suit on and everything. I guess you listen to Mozart or whatever. I'm like, no, but I listen to AC/DC and Ozzy Osbourne. Really, really, that is true. It's like I'm I'm driving down. I'm driving down the highway. I'm listening to like Black and Back, Back in Black, or something like that. AC/DC or Ozzy or Van Halen or something like that. I'm not listening to country music. I'm not listening to VOA. I'm not listening to opera. But people think sometimes because of what you do and who you are that you're a certain way. But we're all just people like everybody else. We all got our own unique interests and abilities that people perhaps don't realize. Now, I don't really think I'm a great singer, but I enjoy singing. And if some people find that a bit entertaining, great, But I don't mind making a fool of myself every now and then.
No, listen, as someone that wishes they could sing and definitely cannot, I say kudos to you if you can do it. We're about to end it off here. AB, before I sort of closed it out here, though, is there anything you want to end off with our friend, the speaker?
Well, primarily that you should look into doing a duet with the CBC's Terry Roberts, because I think he's got a version of Jolene by Dolly Parton that is just set to Pauline instead of Jolene. You'll have to ask him to perform it to you sometime.
Sean Panting did the Pauline thing to Jolene. That was many years ago, and
that wasn't actually my question, although thank you. I didn't mean to rob Sean Panting of his copyright there. I got a question for both of you, because you both kind of touched on it earlier about understanding the rules and enforcing them. Because you were both in the House since 2011. In your time in the House, you've had, I don't know how many speakers. Which one was the toughest when it came to kind of cracking that whip and keeping the enforcement level up on rules and decorum and procedure in the House?
I'm trying to think now, Paul. Like, this takes us back to memory lane. I think Ross Wiseman was the speaker when we started. But when I was in opposition, there's times I'd look at Ross Wiseman and I was like, man, that's a homer there if there ever was one. But after I put the time in, I had a real grudging respect for how he ran the House, how he got things done and had control of the table and the officers. Like, there was no doubt he was the leader. I would say he was really good. There's times when you can be controlling when I don't think you're allowing, like, I don't ever recall Ross shutting down a debate just because it got loud. Whereas I've seen that happen and I don't think it's the right thing. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe Paul's different, but like, just because you're loud, just because you're arguing didn't mean that you were doing something wrong. Whereas I've seen some cases where it was a case of, well, if the volume got high, we had to turn it down. But the volume being high was indicative of the importance of the issue or the emotions being felt. That's just me.
I would agree with that, Andrew. While we have to have respect and decorum, I think members would be doing a disservice to their constituents if they weren't passionate about issues, particularly issues that are impacting their constituents. So yeah, I was there when Ross was there. I thought Ross did a good job, to be honest with you. And I guess I'll always have a soft spot to some degree for Tom Osborne, because myself and Tom were we kind of served for the whole time I was there.
Calm Tom.
Yeah, calm Tom, right? Tom just got this sort of demeanor about him, right? Like, he's a guy that didn't really have to raise his voice or whatever, but he's just got that demeanor, and I've always had a lot of respect for Tom, to be honest with you.
I'm going to take it home here now. So first thing I say, Paul, is more of an anecdote. it's an advantage I think you have, because there was often times where you were the deputy speaker, in the sense that you would go fill in when the regular speaker was out. But I'll never forget one time Wade Verge was doing that, and he was the speaker, and then he went and sat back, and he was in government, I was in opposition. The next thing you know, he's heckling me. And I was giving him the gear, saying, "You can't beat a ref 1 minute and then start heckling me the next one." And he sort of took it to heart. He never heckled again. And I say to someone, I had a lot of time for Wade, still do, actually.
Good guy.
And it was just funny, though, because I tried to use that to my advantage there. The second thing I'm going to say, and this is sort of for you going forward. I mean, if you had asked me in 2011 about Paul Lane, the speaker, I probably wouldn't have envisioned that. You're someone that, like all of us, you've evolved over time. I mean, you came in as a member of the government, you took a stand there, left, came over with the Liberals, us at the time, took a stand there, left, went independent, and surprised a lot of people, because no one ever thought an independent would win a election, let alone two, let alone three, which I think speaks to you. So what I would say to you is that while I might not have envisioned the speaker's role for you back when you started, I definitely see you in it now. I think you've shown that time in the role is a good thing. It allows that wisdom to grow. And I think you're going to have that in good stead when you sit in there. I mean, I want, there's only so many of us that have been members of that chamber. We all wanted to see it succeed and do well, see good debates, passionate debates. So I want you to do well. And I think that your last 15 years have put you in a good spot to run the show.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate that, and yeah, there's no doubt that like us all, as you say, I think you evolve over time. And to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't want the 2011 version of me in the speaker's chair, and I'm just being totally candid, totally honest. I don't think it would have been a good idea in 2011. But I do believe that you're right. Over time, you gain a lot of experience. You gain a lot of perspective. I think you get a little older. You probably, arguably, you get a little bit wiser. You've kind of been there, done that, been down many roads, seen how different outcomes, both in yourself and in your colleagues, of how things work and how things worked out when different approaches were taken. And I think there is something to be said for experience, and I'm hoping to. I view it as a strength, and that's something that I'll be bringing to the role. And hopefully, when it's all said and done, that people will be able to look back and say, that fellow Lane, he did a decent job.
Last question, and I don't know if you can answer it. Okay, so I like to play pro line once in a while. I don't know if they're going to have this one on there, but what's the over under on number of days before you have to sit Eddie Joyce down? People wouldn't always see that there's a lot of days in the House of Assembly. Eddie and Paul will be sat together over as the independents. I spend a lot of time sort of hanging out over there in the corner of the room, sort of the three old fellas sat back watching it all. So, again, I'm looking forward to seeing both of you back in action. I always enjoy it. Paul, really appreciate you taking the time. You've got a lot of things on your plate right now, and so we're really appreciative of you taking the time to come and talk to us, give it a little more of that insider's view of the new role that you hold, and certainly wishing you all the best. And we'll be watching when March 2nd, when the House opens, we'll be watching.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for coming on. It's a very diplomatic answer. You're settling into the speaker's role already. What the listener and viewer might not know is the press gallery is right above the speaker. So I actually and my colleagues won't see you in the House so much. We won't have any trouble hearing you, though, and we look forward to that. So thanks for coming on to talk to us about it today and to set the table, and really interested to see what happens over the next several weeks.
So, yeah, and thanks, guys. I've really enjoyed the opportunity, and perhaps we can do it again sometime after I've had some time in the chair. Maybe I can give you a little bit of insight later on down the road. But thanks for having me. I enjoy your podcast. After watching several, I did watch your podcast with Cochrane and Tim Powers and
first sitting MHA to be on the Honourable and the Hack. Listen, brother, thank you for your time. Wishing you all the best, and hopefully we can have you back on again after a fun and good and interesting session in the House of Assembly.
All right. That was a great one. Paul Lane. It's really going to be interesting to see him settle into a role where he can't just kind of shoot off what he thinks about everything, and maybe the test of his career.
It's gonna be tough. It would be tough for anyone, and I mean, Paul made a career of contributing to just about every debate. Whether there's days I'm like, Jesus, like you can sit this one out. There's other, but that was what he took pride in, and I get it. Like I loved being in opposition and being able to speak to all the different things that came there, and he took advantage of it. Not everybody does. Many people don't put the work in or put the time in. Paul did. Again, I'll give Eddie Joyce credit as well. Like as independents, they took and they take these roles seriously. But for Paul not to be able to do that, and to reiterate something we said before, I think this is going to be a chippy start to the House of Assembly. It's going to be high energy. They have there's so many new things here. And so I think that's what makes it exciting. Like I can't believe I'm talking about the beginning of the House of Assembly as exciting, but it is.
Yeah, an interesting point about Chippy Start. I think it's going to be interesting too. We saw a lot of these initial PC moves have been to roll back. The prior Liberal legislation. They have some of their own ideas too, and they're taking things in new directions. But there's a lot of new members. It was a really close election, one of the closest we've ever had. And I think all of that is going to combine for some kind of high tension moments that he is going to have to be in the middle of and to referee.
Yeah, and people don't realize too, like it's no different than, and I mentioned this a million times with sports or in other things where having control of the rule book, understanding process and procedure, and anybody who's been any kind of legislative geek can read back over the years about different things that have been done, not just here but throughout. There's the time when I think I can't remember if it was the opposition back in the day, because they're able to pull a ruling out and stop the vote, actually reduced the salaries of government cabinet ministers to $1. And that's that kind of parliamentary play where, of course, it was reversed. It never stayed. But I'm hoping, Paul's talking about the work he's putting into it. And I have no doubt he's doing it. I really want him to get up to snuff because you need a good speaker. And at the same time that, the opposition House leader role and the government House leader role are important. And I hope everybody's taking the responsibility seriously because it means a lot, and it leads to what this democracy is supposed to look like. It's supposed to follow a process, but like any process, full understanding and mastery of it makes it even better.
Yeah, I joked earlier in the pod about his constituency work, but he is a worker. He's just a guy who puts in the hours. And our listeners and viewers might be picking this up in the morning, but we're recording this at night and he was still in his office. I'm going to bed after this. And that is another part of his reputation that he's burnished over the years. And so with that, I think it's a great place to say goodnight, maybe good morning to our listeners, to thank Paul Lane for coming on. And Andrew, great as always.
Yeah, you know what, AB, that was a good one. I mean, I thought Paul did a good job, and I meant what I said. I mean, I've had some issues with him over the years. We've been in opposition against each other multiple times, been on the same team. But you come out at the end of it realizing that the man has put the work in, continues to put the work in, and there's a reason he's been elected as many times as he is, and I'm sure he's going to do. He's going to put that same work into this new role, and like we're interested in watching, and it's going to be looking forward to the House of Assembly back. On that note, we're looking forward to being back ourselves, man. The podcast, we're wanting you to continue to tune in, to listen. That's the most important thing. If you can drop a like, that's great. Drop a comment. Reach out to us. I mean, we're constantly responding, listening, answering, chirping, you name it. Bring it on. And we're having a lot of fun doing this, folks. That's the main thing. Hopefully you are enjoying it half as much as we are enjoying putting this together. So shout out to producer KP. And on that note, folks, onwards and upwards.
Till next time. Bye.